A recent survey of the average American found that we're really good at self-segregating. In fact, this study done by Robert Jones of the Public Religion Research Institute found that the average white American has one black friend, one Latino friend, an Asian friend, one mixed race friend, and then one friend of another race. I don't even know what that means. But they have 91 white friends, okay? So that shows that if you're white, you're more likely to hang out with a group of white people. The same is true of black individuals, but it's not as stark. So let's take a look at that. So the average black American has 83 black friends, but they have 8 white friends, 2 Latino friends, usually 0 Asian friends, which is interesting, 3 mixed race friends, and 1 friend of another race, okay? And then 4 friends of an unknown race. Now, how did they do this study, or this survey, I should say? They found a nationally representative sample. They surveyed these individuals and asked them questions about their group of friends. Now, they asked all sorts of questions about demographics, like gender, age, you know, to hide the fact that they were trying to gauge the racial group that they hang out with. But this is how they found out that, hey, we do self-segregate. So this is not, you know, to criticize white people or criticize black people or criticize anyone. It's just an example of how we are more likely to spend time with and hang out with people that are like us. And that does have some negative ramifications. For instance, you're more likely to understand the struggles of a certain group of people if you engage with them and you talk with them and you understand what they're going through. You're less likely to understand their struggles if you segregate yourself with people that are like-minded, with people that are of the same race as you.
I don't agree with the term that it's self-segregation because I think it is kind of surprising that we are surprised by this, considering that segregation in terms of certain areas in the United States is as blatant as literally black and white. You can go through certain areas. I lived in LA for about 6 years. And it's so obvious to me. I don't know if I've just got a special outlook on it because I came from a different world. But it's so obvious. You drive down Jefferson Boulevard, one side of it, Studio City, where you might get a mix of races. The other side is a community that is considered a lower economic community. And the race is specifically 1 or 2 different races. And it's so obvious because areas are created to hub certain races, right? So this takes me back to an article I read a couple of weeks ago in the New York Times. New York City, considered the one of the most diverse cities in the world, they're actually looking to try and assist when it comes to these new 40,000 housing estates to try and adjust so that racial segregation in housing isn't as prominent. In New York, a city where you walk through and you're like, wow, this is really diverse. But you have to take the look at that there is still segregation when it comes to housing estates. There is still segregation when it comes to certain races because it's the way the system was set up in this country.
Well, okay, so let me clarify something. I think self-segregation is absolutely something that's happening in this country, right? With that said, yeah, I mean, of course you're going to deal with neighborhoods where people are from a lower socioeconomic status. That impacts minorities more than anything. And so you have, you know, certain neighborhoods that have more minorities, certain neighborhoods that have wealthy white individuals. You see that throughout the country, especially in big cities like New York or LA. At the same time, that's one factor. So you're absolutely right about that. But self-segregation does happen. I mean, it's definitely evident on school campuses, college campuses, where people hang out with others that look and act and behave just like them. But it's just a fact of the matter. It happened in my high school.
It's too much to ask a certain individual to like force themselves out of their comfort zone to be friends with other people. Like I do it because it's in my nature. Like I don't care. So, which is one of the things I found out, that I have way more different ethnicities than the average white American. But there is something that should be said about this study, okay? Because well, one thing that people wanted to, you know, sensationalize out of the study was that, oh my God, white Americans have way less black friends than black Americans have white friends. Now, that's a factor that's not that surprising when you take into consideration that 223 million white Americans exist and only 38 million black Americans exist in America. So when you look at the numbers, and that's obviously including Hispanic whites, which is kind of like Anna Kasparian, but that was a joke. But
I liked it. I liked it.
Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is, surprisingly, the numbers add up.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers match up. So,
yeah, and the researchers mentioned that. They said that, you know, the population differences do play a role in the disparity that you see here. There's obviously a smaller black population in the United States, so that does play a role.
That's why there's the disparity between 8 to 1 is what I was trying to say.
Yes, yeah, so that exists. But I do think that it's pretty obvious that we do tend to hang out with and choose to hang out with people that are like us. And I don't think that we're doing that consciously. I don't think that most people think to themselves, I don't want to hang out with that black person. I think that a lot of it happens subconsciously. Look, an example of it, and this is anecdotal, I understand that, but I think that it's kind of indicative of what a lot of people experience. When I was in high school, I remember all the Armenian kids hung out with the Armenian kids. I hung out with the Latino kids.
That's why I said it.
Right?
White, Hispanic, and a Kasparian.
But, and then, the black kids hung out with the black kids. It was just very evident to me, right? And it made me wonder what kind of impact that does have on society. Because, look, when we have all these stories pop up about Black Lives Matter or about, black people or minorities in general getting harassed by cops with stop and frisk policies, you'll have, white people say things like, well, they shouldn't be acting suspiciously, or they shouldn't be out at this time of the night. And there's like this disconnect. There's this lack of understanding of what other communities are dealing with and coping with. And so I think engaging with one another can help solve that a little bit. I know that certainly happened with the gay community, right? So over the last 5 years,
They are white.
Over the last 5 years, the gay community has made massive strides when it comes to equality in the country. There's still a long way to go, but they have made massive strides. And I realized one of the reasons why that's happening is because gay people were coming out and they were doing so confidently, right? And they were no longer willing to stand back in the shadows and hide who they really were. And then all of a sudden, all of these bigoted family members were like, oh, well, my daughter's gay, or my son is gay, my cousin's gay, my aunt's gay, whatever.
My son is black.
Well, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that in a second. But it's true. And then all of a sudden, that movement started personalizing the LGBT community, and people started engaging with people that they knew that were actually part of that community.
So what happens if you grow up in that community then? And you grow up in a community where you're raised to engage with people who aren't just like you. That's what I'm saying I'm not saying that that's the only factor, but that's the point I wanted to reiterate is I didn't come to America and I didn't come a Republican or a Democrat, but I became a democratic person because I had the ability and I wanted to understand other people's different cultures because I wasn't raised in an area that was specific to a certain race or specific to a certain amount of beliefs. That's the point I'm trying to emphasize. As you mentioned that you're not doing it consciously, but that's because you've been raised in a way that you're in your comfort zone.
Yes.
And people want to go along with their comfort zone. It's a sociological term.
Yes.
It's called reification. It's when you just subconsciously do something and you don't think it's offensive, and it's not most of the time, but it's just what you've been taught to do.
Yeah.
And it happens when you're raised. That's my main point, is when you start to engage different communities into a certain area, when you're raised, because I strongly believe that the community you grow up in will sculpt your beliefs and sculpt how you engage with different races. That if you do that at an earlier age and you start to do that more so throughout the United States, then it will start to happen naturally. You'll start to find that more people become more integrated with each other. I might just be a mad scientist, but I'm just coming in from a different
you're
perspective.
100% right.
You're
like
absolutely right.
I grew up in Turkey. There are no black people in Turkey. None. There's absolutely no maybe like 3 or 4. Okay? I came out here and I learned racism through the things I've saw, through other people's feedback, through television shows, through realizing, oh, wait, like I'm watching a TV show and there's only one black person and it's not, the interaction's not the same. And we as a society need to be more understanding of that, and we are kind of now, just like we did with the LGBT community. It's not just about taking black culture and using it for our own advantages. It's not about just taking, their music or anything like that, or like certain aspects of black culture and just, promoting it through white faces. That's why people like Beyonce are incredibly important.
Yes.
That's why I promote and love when important black figures come out and they embrace their identity, their culture. It's not separatist. It's not polarizing. It's actually saying, hey, this is who we are. We need you to love us for what we are.
Look, I don't know if this is the best solution, but this is what I see happening personally, right? First of all, the best way to combat this type of, social trend is education, right? Doing studies like this, understanding social trends, and finding solutions to let people know about what's going on and what we can do to solve it. Okay, so that's step number one. But what I also see happening is, look, newer generations are not as close-minded, right? And so you see a lot more people getting involved in biracial relationships. And that's happening at a rapid pace in America right now. And I think that that alone is going to do good things for race relations in the country.
Yeah, you mentioned the point there. I think that is the most valid one. Is we're becoming so much more progressive and open to those in the LGBT community. Why? Because we're starting to relate. Oh, I've actually got a cousin. So what happens if you are born into that and you are born into, oh, I've got a black person who lives on my street.
Right.
Oh, I've got a Hispanic who lives around the corner from me and I play football with him, or soccer if we manage to get that caught on here. So what happens when you start to mold younger minds into believing that it's okay to mix? It's just so clear to me. That's the only reason that I think.
I absolutely, and I think a lot of young people already feel that it's okay to mix. I certainly feel it's okay.
Yeah,
to mix,
it'll become more prominent.
Yeah.
It'll become more prominent.